What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So as you can see, I changed the reptile room again. If you ask my girlfriend, I'm probably driving her nuts. I've still got to put some stuff up on the wall, but this seems like it's going to be the new reptile room for for the foreseeable future. But today, we're going to be talking about Blue-Tongue Skinks, which in my opinion, as well as some other YouTubers' opinions that I've found out from my own research in the last couple weeks, is probably one of the most underrated reptiles in the entire hobby. Ball pythons are obviously number one, and as far as lizards go, bearded dragons kind of have a monopoly on the market as far as the most popular reptile lizard. And in my opinion, Blue-Tongue Skinks, Northerns, Easterns, and Indonesians, those are the three main ones that are kept as pets. There are quite a few more subspecies. They're definitely a lot easier to care for than bearded dragons. We are up to 16 We are up to 16 subscribers as of the recording of this video. I'm very happy with that, and I hope that we can continue to grow this channel even further. I really appreciate all the comments, all the likes on all the different social medias. Some of you may know, if you follow me on social media, I do have an Indonesian blue-tongue skink. His name is Yoshi. We have had him for a little over a year now, and he's probably been one of the most fun interactive reptiles that I've ever owned. And this is one thing that I will say when it comes to any reptile: always do your research before you get the animal. Don't try and learn as you go. That is a living thing, and that is another life that you are responsible for taking care of. Always try and do your research on any animal. Obviously, there are rescue situations where you just want to get that animal out of where it's at, and anything you can give it would be better than what it has. But if you plan on getting a reptile, make sure you know about that animal before you get it. We went to the reptile shop and we saw Yoshi in a cage. And at the time, I hadn't done a lot of research and I didn't think much of it. I just thought, oh, that's cool. I want one of those eventually. Well, we left, and because I was breeding my own feeders at the time for my ball pythons, we didn't have to make very many trips to the reptile shop. So I think it was 3 or 4 months went by, and we went back, and Yoshi was still there. And through that 3 or 4 month time, I had been doing research on Blue-Tongue Skinks because I decided that I wanted one. And we ultimately decided to bring him home. He was really hissy when we first got him. He didn't like being held. He's still not a huge fan of being held. Now, and one of the coolest things about Blue-Tongue Skinks, I think, is I can take a superworm or a horned worm or a dubia roach, and I can get it with tweezers, and I'll set it right up on my forearm like this, and he'll literally climb up my arm out of his enclosure to get that bug. Overall, I think Blue-Tongue Skinks are way easier than bearded dragons. A lot of people know who are bearded dragon keepers. Their diet changes as they get older. They need a pretty warm basking spot. And the one good thing about bearded dragons is... wow, I'm drawing a blank. I love our bearded dragon, I swear. Oh, I remember. One good thing about bearded dragons is their humidity requirements. There isn't much of any. Standard house humidity in the US is between 30 and 50%, and that's perfect for a bearded dragon. For a blue-tongue skink, on the other hand, the Australian subspecies, they can tolerate pretty low humidity, 40 to 60% humidity range. So if you want something that you don't really want to have to worry about humidity, go with an Australian subspecies, northern, eastern. Shinglebacks are the other ones, but those are really rare to find, but they are by far the coolest skinks, in my opinion. But Indonesians, if you're comfortable keeping humidity at pretty high levels, 60 to 80% is typically what they need. There are a couple other subspecies that actually require higher. So, this is Yoshi, and he is our Indonesian blue-tongue skink. There we go. You gonna show him that tongue again? Or is that not a thing? Thank you. And he's peeing on me right now, just so you know. This little guy, like I said, he's about 1.5 years old. He's not huge yet. He will get quite a bit bigger. Oh, he just dropped his sperm plugs on me. That happened. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go clean this up. One of the main reasons why I think that blue-tongue skinks are so underrated is they're super interactive, especially compared to something like a ball python. They'll come up in their enclosures, they'll eat from your hand, and they are diurnal, so they are awake during most of the day, and they're out during most of the day. Make sure you are 100% sure on what species you have, because although feeding and lighting are pretty similar, humidity is very different for every single species. So make sure when you get your blue-tongue skink that it's one species or another. If you can find that out directly from a breeder or whoever's selling the animal, that's ideal. But always make sure you double check and do your research. One of the telltale signs that you have an Indonesian species versus an Australian species is the front legs. I'm not sure if you can see them. Let's see. Yeah, so his two front legs, you're okay, buddy, are both black. Yeah, so as far as blue-tongue skinks go, they are super easy to care for. And that's the number one reason why I think they're so underrated. They get large. They don't get so large, though, that their enclosure has to be massive. You can see his enclosure right here behind me in the corner. That is a 4 foot wide by 2 foot deep, and I believe it is 18 inches tall. They have been shown to thrive in 40-gallon breeder tanks that I provided him with a 4 foot by 2 foot, which, depending on who you talk to, is either the standard or the recommended size for the enclosure that they keep. Same thing goes for the northerns. They have been shown to thrive in 40-gallon breeders, but a lot of people online and a lot of keepers who do have them usually recommend a 4x2. And the Australian species, because they don't require as much humidity, you can even keep them in something like a melamine enclosure that you can make from buying materials at a hardware store. But the Indonesians, though, I wouldn't recommend that. And like I said, they are diurnal, so this is a species that's going to be awake when you're awake, which I know for a lot of people, that's a big deal. But most species that are commonly kept, like ball pythons or even crested geckos, they're nocturnal. These guys, not a problem. But one of the coolest things about these guys is they actually eat primarily wet, premium, grain-free dog food. That has been found to be one of the most balanced diets that they can have. In the wild, blue-tongue skinks will eat anything from carrion, which is basically dead animal carcasses. They'll eat insects, they will eat veggies, and in Australia, a lot of people have reported about finding wild blue-tongue skinks in their backyard eating the dog food out of their dog bowls. So somebody had the wise idea to start trying out wet premium dog food, and these guys thrive on it. It's essentially what their staple food is. So feeding them isn't hard. It's not hard to find food for them. And for those of you who don't like having to feed rodents to your reptiles, well, this is a good alternative if you don't want to have to feed rodents. Essentially, when they're babies, a lot of breeders will start them out on wet premium cat food because it's higher in protein. And then as they get to about a year old, they'll switch them over to wet canned dog food. Again, grain-free, premium dog food, not the Walmart brand or anything like that. You do have to check to make sure that it's safe for them. You do want to make sure it's varied. You don't want to just feed them one thing like the wet premium dog food. You do want to chop up some veggies like collard greens, mustard greens, butternut squash, things like that. Basically the same veggies that you can feed to most omnivorous reptiles, they can have as well. Babies usually eat once a day, and the serving size is about the size of their head. So that's a pretty easy way to measure it, just like ball pythons, how you kind of measure around the snake to find out how big of a rodent you feed it. With Blue-Tongue Skinks, whatever size their head is, that's the helping of food that they get. But when they are fully grown adults, they only need to eat once a week. So it's the ease of feeding that you get with a ball python in the sense that they only eat one time a week. They do seem to benefit from UVB because they are a diurnal species and they are a basking species. There have been breeders who have had success with it, where they've kept them in bins with no UVB, just heat mat, and they basically supplement the D3 and calcium into their diet, which is something you can do, but because they have the capacity to process D3 from UVB, it is recommended to provide them with UVB, and it is what I recommend as well. So I also add in the calcium with the vitamin D3 supplement into his food once or twice a week. Their basking spot isn't too bad. It's not as hot as something like a Savannah monitor or a tegu or something like that is going to need. These guys, depending on species, it's usually between 92 and 102 degrees for our basking area. It's not crazy hot, so that makes things a lot easier, less risk of fire. Alrighty, well, I'm going to go ahead and put him back just so he doesn't get overly stressed, and we'll finish this up. Alrighty. Another thing about Blue-Tongue Skinks, but I really don't think is a big deal, is their nails. This can be corrected if you give them rough surfaces to walk on, like bricks, half logs, things like that. They don't really climb, they're not arboreal, but they will climb over these things. And if you put like a cement brick in their enclosure that they can climb over, it will kind of file their nails down. For Yoshi, we give him about a 3 to 5 inch substrate. I do that with a mix of Freedom Breeders cocoa blocks, and then I will mix that with cypress mulch, and sometimes I will put some Eco Earth in it as well. All three of those hold humidity very well. With his enclosure, I probably only change it once every other month, if not once every 3 months. Part of the reason of that is actually because it is semi-bioactive. We actually have springtails in there as kind of a cleanup crew. I've been thinking about introducing isopods in there as well. If you're holding your skink 2 or 3 times a week for 5 or 10 minutes, they become very, very docile and really relaxed. They can be pretty vocal, so they will hiss. They make this really huffy noise. They'll inhale a bunch of air to make themselves look big and scary, and sometimes they'll even stick that tongue out and flare it to try and scare you off. Now, if your Blue-Tongue Skink is flaring its tongue at you, I wouldn't necessarily recommend reaching in and grabbing it. That's a very defensive posture that they will do. But usually ours is pretty hissy, but like I said, as soon as he's out of his enclosure for a minute, he's fine. They do burrow, so you want to provide 3 to 5 inches of substrate for them so that they can fully bury themselves in their substrates. Giving them hides is important, fake foliage. They like to feel safe, and they like to be hidden. They will come out and bask, and sometimes he'll even come out and not be basking. He'll just post up on his little log back there and stare at the computer screens or stare at me. Probably just because he knows that I feed him, but it's still pretty cool to see that. There are morphs available for Blue-Tongue Skinks. Now with the Indonesian species, you're more looking at there's the Exantics and there's the albinos. With the Australian species, on the other hand, there are a bunch of morphs. I mean a lot. You can get leucistic, you can get all black, you can get oranges, you can get yellows, there's a lot. But, downside, Australia doesn't allow exports anymore. So, whatever morphs are here in the US for those species are the only ones we're ever going to get. And that's it. Unless they lift the ban some point in the future, don't plan on getting a all-black blue-tongue skink because you won't be able to find one in the US. I've been talking about how great blue-tongue skinks are and why I love them so much. The goods, the bads, kind of the normal care and things like that. But how much do they cost? That's the real question. Because an animal can be amazing, but if it's outside of your price range, well, then it's outside of your price range, and so much for that. Northerns, or the Australian species. Why can't I say species? See, now I can say it. I'm mad. I'm saying species. Okay, but the Australian species, I almost did it again. They are going to be a lot more expensive. The lowest I have ever found on a northern blue-tongue skink, CBB, which means captive born and bred, was $400, and that was for a male hatchling. I think the average price that I've seen is probably around $450 or $500 for a captive born individual. Now, the Indonesians, you should be able to find a lot cheaper. But it is very dependent on if you're getting a captive bred versus a wild caught or captive born. Now, there are two different things that you have to watch out for. So there's something called CBB and CB. CBB stands for captive born and bred, which means that animal was bred in captivity and it was born in captivity by a breeder. CB usually stands for captive born, which means that the mother could have been taken from the wild, gave birth in captivity, and now they're selling that animal. The problem with that is captive born animals or wild caught animals tend to have parasites, which means yes, you're getting it for $180 to $250 for a captive born or wild caught individual, but then you're going to have to go take it to the vet because it's either going to have health issues or it has parasites, and now you've got to pay a vet bill of $200 to $300. And at that point, might as well have bought a captive born and bred specimen, whether that be an Australian or an Indonesian, doesn't really matter. The Indonesians, captive born and bred, do tend to be a bit cheaper than the Australian counterparts. I believe I've seen CBB Indonesians for around $300. I think the lowest I saw ever was $250. But yeah, like I said, these animals are very different and very, very cool looking. That blue tongue is definitely one of the biggest appeals to me. I thought that was really cool. That's why he ended up being named Yoshi, because he just blam all the time. Blam. And it's blue. I even got this little, yes, I have this on my desk, and no, I didn't have it out specifically for the video. It's just always on my desk. I got this sticker off well, actually ours is a magnet, but I got it off of Etsy, and it is a blue-tongue skink drinking a blue slushie. Thought it was cool. But yeah, he is still by far probably my favorite reptile that I've ever kept. And I definitely think that blue-tongue skinks don't get enough hype in the hobby. And I hope that changes. And I do recommend them for anybody who understands what they're getting themselves into, obviously. But hey, guys, thank you for coming back. Thank you for checking out the channel. This channel isn't possible without you guys who are watching, so please comment, like, subscribe. I think this past month has been really rewarding for me, and I've really enjoyed making all these videos, and I hope that I can continue to do it. Essentially, I want to make this a full-time job. That is my dream, and that's what I'm hoping to do with this channel. Or if there's anything that you guys would like to see on this channel, please be sure to let me know, because like I said, this channel cannot and won't be possible without you guys watching, and I really, really appreciate you. So, you guys have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.